hours already. You need to know if they're your patient or your friend. And if you don't know...
I agreed with you on. I said he waited way too long to have that DTR. I had agreed with that. I just don't think it's as big of a violation as you think it is, which is fine, by the way. I'm not even trying to convince you.
Can you describe a situation a state of a relationship between a doctor and a patient where after 10 hours of talking, that is a bigger violation of this rule, the failure to establish whether the relationship is a doctor-patient relationship. So you're allowed to not be somebody's doctor, and you're allowed to be somebody's doctor.
Not a doctor-patient relationship necessarily. That's the whole thing. So probably
can I
would have established it. No,
I want to finish my question.
Probably after not establishing after 10 hours would have been a problem.
I'm requesting.
However, you gotta let her. We gotta let her respond to your question. I feel like.
Wait, I didn't ask the question. She interrupted me while I was asking it.
Okay, it sounded like you asked a question, but maybe I just misheard. Okay.
Just to be clear, I've never actually appealed to Steven to make space for me.
If you're playing a game, I'm gonna lose my shit right now.
No.
Yeah, you are.
Well,
maybe you missed the question because you're not fucking paying attention to what we're saying.
Okay, well, here's something I am positive of. You've talked for like 3 times the amount of time she has, so I'm giving her a little bit more leeway when it comes to speaking. But it sounded like there was a question there, but maybe there wasn't. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, here's my question.
It sounds like you're like asking a question, and then you like talk past the question, but you're not asking. It's like a rhetorical question. It's like, okay, go ahead.
Oh no, here's a real question.
Okay, go ahead.
You're allowed to be somebody's doctor. You're allowed to not be somebody's doctor. The rule is you're not allowed to sort of be somebody's doctor. After 5 sessions, Dr. K says to Byron, I don't know if I'm your doctor or if I'm your friend. Can you describe, if you're saying that is not a flagrant violation, can you describe what would be a more flagrant violation of this rule than that?
A more flagrant violation of this rule than that?
Yes.
Never, ever clarifying, ever. And then when he says, I don't know what this is, not making him give you a firm answer publicly on air about that. That would have been worse, right? If he led him to be like, I don't know if we're friends or not.
Wait a second. Wait,
and then nothing else happened after that. And I'm
not talking about after.
I'm talking
about after. I'm saying at that moment in time, 10 hours into their relationship, regardless of what happened after.
It would also be worse if he never had a disclaimer. That would also be way worse.
Okay. At that moment in time, 10 hours of talking, Dr. K says, I don't know if you're my patient or you're my friend. Or I don't know if I'm your friend or if I'm your doctor. Can you describe a state that the relationship could be in at that point that would be more of a violation of this rule? To me, that seems like the furthest you can be from being someone's doctor and not being someone's doctor is to be square in the middle, which is the worst place you can possibly be to follow this rule.
So wait, is your issue with the time? Because I already gave you a bunch of examples that would have made the ethics violation worse. Disclaimer,
no, my issue,
50 hours, that would have been way worse, right? 50 hours is even worse.
I said, can you answer this question? At 10 hours, what would be a worse place for them to be in? So here is, I'm your friend. Here is, I'm your doctor, and at 10 hours, Dr. K says, we're here. This is the flagrant violation. This is the baby rape zone. This is where we know that you have broken the rule. This is where he squarely puts himself after 10 hours of talking, and you're saying it's nuanced, and we don't know how bad of a rule.
Of course it is. Because it would have been worse if it was 50 hours, and it would have been better if it was 2 hours, and it would have been even better if it was hour 1.
Okay, at 10 hours, can you describe a worse location for Dr. K and Byron to be than right here?
Probably having sex with him would have made that also worse.
That's a different rule. This rule is about establishing the doctor-patient relationship. At 10 hours in, Dr. K says, we are directly between patient and friend.
He said, I am your doctor, and I have been this whole time. That also would have been a real issue.
If he would have been prescribing medication, that could have been an issue. Or making more firm, formal diagnoses, that could have been a bigger issue. There's probably a lot of things he could have done that would have been worse.
I actually would argue that would be better, because if he was prescribing medication, he would be moving the needle toward doctor.
Can I pose an alternative situation where I don't know, because fuck.
Just to be clear, him prescribing
Excuse me, did you just interrupt
would
me?
have been worse, because he can't practice as a doctor if he hasn't established himself as a doctor. True. That would be way worse.
That would be a different rule that he's
way worse.
It wouldn't be worse in terms of this rule.
I don't know if seeking a clarification means that it's actually as bad as it is. So let's say, for instance, let's say that I was tutoring somebody for a college subject. 22-year-old girl, she comes to me and anything because I have such
Mm.
a huge brain. And I'm
Yeah.
tutoring her, and I'm like, okay. And she is like, maybe a little bit flirty at the beginning. But it's like, okay, hey, listen, like, I'm just your tutor. I'm here to like teach you this. If we were doing math, having tons of fun because math is so much fun, and after like 2 or 3 sessions, it was still like really flirty. And I take a second, like, okay, hold on. We need to figure out like what the relationship is here. Like, do you want to do like a flirty thing or whatever? Because if you do, like, I'm not going to tutor you anymore. Or do you want to continue tutoring? Because if so, this has to stop. I don't know if saying that I'm seeking clarification at that point necessarily condemns me to the worst offenses that I could be like committing by dancing across that line. It feels like seeking clarification, if anything, would be an argument that there is some attempt to establish an appropriate relationship there.
I think that I don't think there's a rule that says that you have to have clarity of relationship in order to tutor a 22-year-old.
No, hold on. Yes, there is. And if
What's the rule?
we could amend that analogy a million ways. Let's say I'm a grad student and I'm tutoring a student, if you really want to make it different. But it would be the
Okay.
exact same thing, right? Let's say that I'm a grad student and I'm tutoring somebody in a different department. I'm pretty sure schools probably have rules where upperclassmen can't sleep with underclassmen or something, right? But like, I think we can probably generally agree that it's probably not ethical that for a person that's in a position of teaching you and doing things, they probably shouldn't be fucking you at the same time. It can be
I
weird
agree
for a
with
number
that.
of reasons. Yeah, but like, I don't know if the evidence of, well, he was seeking clarification on the relationship, if that necessarily means that something necessarily was unethical up to that point. Because it could be that we could imagine that in Dr. K's mind, they were in a healthy, appropriate spot, but in Reckful's mind, Dr. K was thinking maybe he's not in a spot, and he was trying to bring Reckful in line with his thoughts. That's
But
a
Dr. K
potentiality,
said,
right?
I don't know if I'm your doctor or your friend. He didn't
Well,
say.
Dr. K, when Dr. K said
didn't
that,
say,
I understand,
"Hey."
I understand. I know. But when Dr. K said that, let's now. I might be being too charitable to Dr. K, and if you want to
You
say that,
are.
that's fine. Okay, maybe I am. But is it possible? Is there some possible world where when Dr. K was saying that, like, well, I don't know if I'm your friend or your doctor right now. Was he saying that because he's confused, or was that a friendly way of trying to kind of prod Reckful and saying like, are you confused? Like when he's saying
No.
like, I don't know if I'm your. You think
I
he
mean,
was?
yeah,
You think Dr. K? Yeah.
You can have a different interpretation of it. My interpretation is Dr. K was starting to realize that he was in serious trouble because he had just told him that he was going to love him for 2 years to treat his BPD, and then quickly had a damage control conversation with him afterward privately where he said, hey, I can't do that and I can't diagnose this in a real diagnosis. I can't love you for 2 years. I overstepped, blah, blah, blah. Although if they're just friends, I don't see how he overstepped or he overpromised or whatever. But he just seemed to me like he was trying to mitigate or undo some of the damage he was doing both to Byron and to himself. But even in that conversation, and it was why I think your charitable read doesn't work, he says, I don't know if I'm your doctor or your patient, and that never gets resolved. Reckful says, I hate the tension here. And Dr. K says, well, that's great. Let's do some breathing exercises and like feel the tension. And Reckful says, well, I need to get this resolved. I need to know if I'm your doctor or your patient, or if I'm your friend or your patient, and it never does. They never actually reach an agreement in that conversation. Dr. K again changes the subject to meditation.
Yeah. So now, for what you're arguing here, I would say this is a different argument. It might be good. This sounds like a good argument. Like that's
Thank
what
you.
I would focus on. So if you're saying that, like, well, there was like the question itself, I don't think it's necessarily bad. But now if that question never gets resolved, well, now that actually seems pretty shitty if they don't actually resolve it and he diverts to something different. But that'd be a different argument.
So what I'm trying to say is my understanding of the therapy ethics, which I think is pretty superb, is that making the statement, I don't know if I am your doctor or if I am your friend, is, in terms of this one rule, which is a bedrock cardinal rule, is probably the worst statement you could possibly make. And the reason it is because the rule is complicated, because most rules, like in tutoring, the rule would be, I want to fuck you, or I'm going to fuck you would probably be the worst statement you could make. Because the rule in tutoring is, it's like a line you can't cross. You shouldn't be sexual. Or then you have to quit. But with being someone's doctor or being someone's friend, you can't be here. And when you say, I don't know if I'm your doctor or if I'm your friend, you are squarely putting yourself right in the exact worst spot you can possibly be. And that's why, in terms of that rule, I don't think it's nuanced at all. I think it'd be very clearly slam dunk is a utterly flagrant violation.
Okay, talk to him.
Move on to. I found the APA while you guys were chatting. I found the APA writing on dual relations. Do you want me to just read it out so like everyone is aware of where they stand broadly?
You can do whatever you goddamn want, Kyla.
Okay. Sure. A psychologist refrains from entering into multiple relationship if the multiple relationship could be reasonably expected to impair the psychologist's objectivity, competence, or effectiveness in performing his or her functions as a psychologist, or otherwise risks exploitation or harm to the person with whom the professional relationship exists.
Okay. And you're saying that you don't know if it would reasonably impugn my ability to, or not impugn, fuck up my ability to be Steven's therapist if he is doing like a stream. I'm an orbiter of him as a streamer. He's doing relationship reviews of my fights with my girlfriend, and we're having a argument that he is the moderator of about therapy ethics. You don't know if that would impact my ability to be a good therapist to him.
So the writing here is intentionally loose. It's open to interpretation. And if you're going to make a claim that a dual relationship is a problem, you have to prove that it impaired all of these things. I am telling you.
Do you think it, or all or any?
You would need to prove that it impaired the psychologist or harmed the person.
Okay. Do you think that it is obvious that that would impair my ability to be Steven's psychologist?
No.
Okay. I think that is batshit insane, and that you, again, need to... I mean, maybe they'll tie this up in the last couple years of school, but I think you are out of your fucking mind in terms of this one topic.
So, to be clear, it might not. It might also as well, right?
I can't imagine. I literally can't imagine, and I can imagine a lot. I can't imagine how that would work. That in a way that would benefit Steven.
Well, it doesn't have to benefit me, right? It just has to not be harmful.
Not harm me, yeah. I mean, how the relationship, yes. I'm saying the relationship would not be able to benefit him, which is necessary. The relationship has to be for the benefit of the patient, and if that would not.
For dual relationships specifically, it can't harm them, and it can't compromise your objectivity, competence, or effectiveness.
Yes, and by compromising those things, it would render the therapy harmful to Steven.
Right, and it probably would be a bad idea. Right? I would agree with you on that.
I'm not even saying
it could be argued.
So here's a question. Can I pose this? I'm just curious, right? Could it be the case? What if you were my counselor or therapist, but the reason why was because I had a lot of anxiety related to athletic performance? And in the scope of all of our therapy, that's generally what our conversations are about. Like, how do you deal with crowds cheering for you, booing at you? How do you practice the day of? Like, what do you do to alleviate those concerns? If we were having this conversation out publicly, and for whatever reason, Kyla reported you to an ethics board to say that this was unethical, is it not possible that the ethics board would take a look at, like, well, what kind of therapy do they do? Now, if the therapy was about, like, this topic in particular, maybe the ethics board would be like, okay, well, he shouldn't be talking about this publicly. This is fucked up.
See,
but if it was about, like, athletic performance, maybe they'd be like, well, this probably wouldn't impact his ability to deliver, like, good and concise therapy or beneficial therapy because it doesn't seem to be there's a lot of overlap. So can that be an example of how a therapy board would go over this? They go like, in this case, it probably wouldn't be harmful, but in other cases, it might be.
I don't think so. I think that you have no, there's no world where it's appropriate for me to be talking to you about the pressure from your family, from the school, from your coach, from your friends, to be out on the field performing and how you deal with your emotions about that, and screaming at you that you're arrogant and gaslighting me on a live stream. There's
okay,
no
wait, hold on, wait,
way
sure. Wait, okay, hold on. And I'll ask Kyla, okay? Because I interpreted your question way differently initially. And I might disagree with her here, that's fine. But initially, I thought your question was just like, could you have this type of conversation where I'm moderating or whatever, and it'd be okay? But now, if you're gonna say something like, based on the behavior you've exhibited, then I would say, yeah, of course not. This would probably almost for sure be not good.
Yes.
That you're my therapist, you're screaming at me, and I'm screaming at you in a conversation. Yeah,
I understand. No, it would be completely inappropriate. It's inappropriate to have a conversation where I think it's inappropriate for us to have a public conversation about pretty much anything especially therapy, especially a conversation that could become heated, and especially a conversation in which you have power over me.
Well, hold on. Now
if
you're
you're
changing
also
your.
his therapist, because there's a whole bunch of extra factors in there.
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, now it seems like you. So me and Melina have gone to a therapist twice now for
Yeah.
relationship stuff. Make sure all of our relationship stuff is cool. If that lady ever wanted to come on and talk with both of us relating to like streamer relationships or public
No.
relationships, and
No.
you don't think that could ever happen in an ethical
No.
sense ever?
No, absolutely
Okay.
not. If she runs into you at a restaurant and says, "Hey, Steven, hey, Melina," that's a violation.
Okay.
I mean, especially if she's going to say, "These are my patients." Like, no, she can't do that.
Well, I could be wrong, but I think that violation is different and way more precise because she would be identifying you. Isn't that like an actual HIPAA violation at that point? I think that's a little different. No?
It's a privacy thing. But
Yeah, but that's
okay,
like
okay, I
an
see what you're saying.
ironclad.
Yes.
Yeah,
It would
yeah,
create a
makes
dual
sense.
relation. I think it would create an inappropriate dual relationship for her to be essentially promoting her business and coming on to your live stream and benefiting. It's like
It would create a dual
e-
relationship.
Yeah,
No
an
one's- I'm not
inappropriate,
disagreeing that a dual
an
relationship
unethical,
might have not existed.
unethical. I think it would be an unethical.
That's
clearly,
the question.
Yes.
Do you think?
And
Here's
my
a question,
answer is
Max. I'm
yes.
curious. Do you think there's any type of ethical dual relationship ever? And can you give an example of it?
Man, I've been talking to you about our dual relationship since the fucking third time we streamed.
Hold on. We don't have a dual relationship at all because that would imply
We
that
do.
one of us is a therapeutic.
No, we have a different dual
But we're
relationship.
talking about
No,
psych
no, we're
ethics.
talk- we're talking- yeah, we're
we need
talking
to
about
identify a professional.
I'm
to
trying to
a
point out
client.
to I'm
That's
trying
the
to
dual
point out
relationship.
my sensitivity to these things.
Well,
and
yeah,
the
but
relevance,
but
the personal relevance that of this to our conversation.
yeah, but I'm saying that like it's a bit different. Like there's going to be different guiding rules here.
Okay, my understanding is that the ethical dual relationships are the ones that are forced. Where if you're a counselor in a high school or a high school psychologist, and then you all interact with the kid like in the lunchroom or in the hallway or something, that's a dual relationship, but it's like expected because you are working in the same place. Or in a small town where you the mechanic, the town mechanic is there's only one and you're the therapist, and so you end up in all kinds of dual relationships with different people in different situations where that kind of privacy and separation is not practical, but it should be avoided. And going onto your live stream is absolutely not anything close to that. Like there needs to
I'll
be
use
a
the
really
restroom.
good. Oh, what? Yeah.
Or no, you can finish. I was going to go to the restroom.
Oh, I was gonna say there needs to be a really good reason for it. That's all.
Okay. All right. I'm going to use the restroom. Don't be too mean to each other. One second.
Okay.
Okay, can I clarify? If the rules are so open and shut, why does the APA word it so ambiguously and open-endedly? Are they being snaky? Cheeky?
Thank you, Hippie Dip. Wait. Okay. Say that one more time. If the rules are so open and shut, why what?
Okay, so if the APA rules around dual relationships and whatnot were so open and shut, why do they word it so ambiguously and open-endedly and up for interpretation if it was just so clear? Are they snaky? Are they wanting to get practitioners fired?
No.
Like, what's going on?
My understanding is that they are wording it vaguely to cast a very wide net to stop most dual relationships.
But the wording inherently doesn't stop most dual relationships.
Well, I think it does, and that's
Because
part
there's
of
two
our
pieces, harm and benefit. Prove it.
that's part of our disagreement. Is I think it does stop. I think the vagueness makes it catch more relationships, and you think it makes it catch less. I don't think that makes it more nuanced. I think it makes it more vague. Like, don't come anywhere near this.
So when they're using more ambiguous language, you think they're making it more open and shut. Just to be clear.